The Billionaire's Betrayal and the Artist's Revenge. Part 1, The Perfect Illusion. The Struggling Artist. Sofia Martinez stood in front of her tiny art studio in Brooklyn, staring at the final notice letter taped to her door. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked pavement, and somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared. Her hands trembled as she pulled the letter down and read it again, even though she had memorized every word. You have 30 days to pay the outstanding rent of $8,500 or vacate the premises. 28 years old, and this was her life. A struggling artist with more dreams than dollars, more passion than practical sense. Her father had always told her that art was a luxury, not a career. But after he died 3 years ago, leaving her only his old leather journal and a small inheritance that she'd already spent on this studio, Sofia had been determined to prove him wrong. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Canvas paintings covered every wall, landscapes of places she'd never visited, portraits of people she'd imagined, abstract pieces that represented the chaos inside her heart. Beautiful, her friends said. Worthless, the art dealers said. Not commercial enough. Too emotional. Too raw. Sofia dropped her bag on the paint-stained floor and collapsed into the old armchair in the corner. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend, Maya. Gallery opening tonight at the Azure. Come. You need to network. You need to get out of that studio. You need to live, Sof. Sofia smiled despite her exhaustion. Maya had been her rock since college, always pushing her, always believing in her even when she didn't believe in herself. I don't have anything to wear to a fancy gallery, Sofia typed back. Wear your black dress. The one that makes you look like a mysterious artist. Be there at 8. No excuses. The encounter. The Azure Gallery was everything Sofia's studio was not: pristine, elegant, filled with people who looked like they bought art the way normal people bought groceries. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and waiters in crisp white shirts carried trays of champagne and tiny appetizers that probably cost more than her weekly food budget. Sofia felt out of place immediately. Her black dress was 5 years old, her shoes were scuffed, and she was pretty sure she still had paint under her fingernails. But Maya grabbed her arm the moment she walked in. You made it. Come on, there's someone I want you to meet. Maya, I don't want to. Too late. You're already here. Maya pulled her through the crowd toward a group of well-dressed people gathered around a large abstract painting. But Sofia wasn't looking at the painting. She was looking at him. He stood tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that was perfectly styled but not overly formal. He wore a navy suit that fit him so well it had to be custom-made. But it was his eyes that caught her, deep brown, intense, like he was actually seeing the art, not just looking at it to show off. Alexander Hunt, Maya whispered in her ear. Billionaire businessman. Tech industry. Turned his father's small software company into a global empire. Single. And, get this, he actually collects art. Before Sofia could protest, Maya was introducing them. Alexander, this is my best friend, Sofia Martinez. She's an incredible artist. Alexander turned, and when his eyes met Sofia's, she felt something shift in the air. He smiled, not the fake smile she'd seen on so many faces tonight, but something genuine. An artist, he said, his voice smooth and warm. What kind of work do you do? Mostly paintings, Sofia said, suddenly feeling shy. Abstract, portraits, whatever speaks to me at the moment. Whatever speaks to you, Alexander repeated, as if testing the words. That's how art should be created. Not for trends or money, but because you have to. Because it's part of you. Sofia blinked in surprise. Exactly. For the next hour, they talked. About art, about life, about everything and nothing. Maya had disappeared into the crowd, leaving them alone. Alexander listened, really listened, to everything Sofia said. He asked about her inspirations, her struggles, her dreams. And when she mentioned her studio situation, he didn't offer empty sympathy. He simply said, "Show me your work sometime. I'd like to see what you create." The whirlwind romance. The next 3 months felt like a dream. Alexander didn't just want to see her work, he wanted to see her. The day after the gallery opening, he showed up at her studio with coffee and pastries. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, standing in the doorway with that same genuine smile. They spent hours in her studio that day. Alexander examined every painting, asking questions, making observations that showed he truly understood art. And when he left, he bought 3 of her pieces for a total of $15,000. "Alexander, I can't accept this." "You're not accepting charity, Sophia. I'm buying art that I genuinely love." There's a difference. That $15,000 saved her studio. But more than that, it saved something inside her, the belief that maybe, just maybe, she could make this work. Their dates were like something out of a movie. Alexander took her to Broadway shows, to Michelin-star restaurants, to weekend trips to his beach house in the Hamptons. He introduced her to his world, but he never made her feel less than. He valued her opinion, respected her independence, and most importantly, he made her laugh. "Tell me about your father," Alexander said one evening as they walked through Central Park. Fall leaves crunched under their feet, and the setting sun painted everything gold. Sophia hesitated. She didn't talk about her father often. He was a businessman. Nothing as successful as you, but he built a good company from scratch. Medical devices. He died 3 years ago in a car accident. "I'm sorry," Alexander said softly, taking her hand. We had a complicated relationship. He never understood my art. He wanted me to take over his company, but I couldn't. I had to follow my own path." She looked up at Alexander. "Does that make me selfish?" "It makes you honest," Alexander said, stopping and turning to face her. "You knew who you were and what you needed. That's not selfish. That's brave." In that moment, Sophia felt something crack open inside her chest, the wall she'd built around her heart since her father's death, since all the rejection from galleries, since all the nights crying alone in her studio. Alexander saw her. He understood her. He loved her for exactly who she was. Or so she thought. The proposal. 6 months after they met, Alexander took Sophia back to the Azure Gallery where they'd first locked eyes. But this time, the gallery was empty except for them. Candles lit the space, and soft music played from hidden speakers. "Alexander, what is this?" Sophia asked, her heart racing. He led her to the center of the room where a single painting hung on the wall, one of hers. The first one he'd ever bought. It was an abstract piece she'd called Hope and Chaos, swirls of dark blues and grays with bursts of gold breaking through. "When I bought this painting," Alexander said, "I wasn't just buying art. I was buying a piece of you. Your hope. Your chaos. Your beauty." He turned to face her, and she saw tears in his eyes. "Sophia Martinez, you've changed my life in ways I never expected. You've shown me that there's more to life than business deals and board meetings. You've reminded me what it feels like to actually live." He dropped to one knee, and Sophia's hands flew to her mouth. "Will you marry me?" The ring was stunning, a simple diamond that caught the candlelight and threw rainbows across the white walls. But Sophia wasn't looking at the ring. She was looking at the man she loved, the man who had saved her in more ways than one. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. As they kissed, Sophia felt like the luckiest woman in the world. She had love. She had support. She had a future that glittered as brightly as the diamond on her finger. But sometimes, the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. The warning signs. Maya was the first to notice something was wrong. They were having lunch at their favorite diner, the cheap one they'd been going to since college, where the coffee was terrible but the memories were good. I'm just saying, Maya said carefully, poking at her salad. Don't you think it's a little strange that Alexander wants you to sign a prenup but won't let you have a lawyer look at it? He said his lawyers already reviewed everything, Sophia replied, defensive. He's protecting both of us. But shouldn't you have your own lawyer? Someone representing your interests? Maya, I trust him. I know you do. But Soph. Maya put down her fork and looked her friend straight in the eye. I've been doing some research on Alexander. Research? Sophia felt a prickle of annoyance. You've been investigating my fiancé? His last girlfriend, before you, she was a pharmaceutical researcher. They dated for 8 months, then suddenly broke up. 3 months later, Alexander launched a new health tech division that directly competed with her company. He knew things, Sophia. Inside information. That's just coincidence. And the girlfriend before that was an interior designer. After they broke up, Alexander launched a luxury home goods line with designs suspiciously similar to hers. Sophia stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't believe you're doing this. Alexander loves me. He's not using me. I hope you're right, Maya said quietly. I really do. But Sophia, your father's company, the medical device company, Alexander just acquired a small tech firm that specializes in the exact same field. Don't you think that's strange? My father's company was sold after he died. I have nothing to do with it anymore. But you have his journal. You told me he wrote everything in there, all his ideas, his patents, his future plans. Sophia felt cold suddenly, despite the warm diner. I never told Alexander about the journal. Are you sure? Was she sure? They'd talked about so many things over the past 6 months. Late-night conversations where she'd opened up about her father, about their relationship, about how she wished she could have made him proud. Had she mentioned the journal? I need to go, Sophia said, grabbing her purse. Sophia, wait. But she was already out the door, Maya's words echoing in her head like a warning bell she wasn't ready to hear. The devastating discovery. Sophia stood outside Alexander's penthouse apartment, her key trembling in her hand. He'd given it to her last month, a symbol of trust and commitment. What's mine is yours, he'd said. She hadn't planned to come here today. After lunch with Maya, she'd gone back to her studio to work, to paint away the uncomfortable feelings that conversation had stirred up. But she couldn't focus. Maya's words kept circling in her mind. Finally, she'd decided to surprise Alexander. Maybe they'd have dinner together, talk about the wedding, laugh about Maya's paranoid theories. Everything would be fine. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Alexander? No answer. His car had been in the garage, so he must be home. Maybe he was in his office, on a call. Sophia walked through the immaculate living room, all modern furniture and expensive art, toward his home office. The door was slightly open, and she could hear voices. Not a phone call. The TV maybe? She pushed the door open wider and froze. Alexander sat at his desk, his back to her, talking to someone via video call on his large monitor. A woman, beautiful, blonde, wearing a business suit. The Martinez situation is proceeding exactly as planned, Alexander was saying, his voice cold and businesslike, nothing like the warm tone he used with Sophia. I've gained access to the journal. The old man's patents for the adaptive cardiac device are exactly what we need to launch ahead of Medicore. Sophia's blood turned to ice. The journal. Her father's journal. The blonde woman on the screen smiled. Excellent work, Alexander. I knew you could pull it off. How much longer until the wedding? 2 months. After that, I'll have legal access to everything through the marriage. But I've already photographed all the relevant pages. We can start development now. And the girl? Does she suspect anything? Alexander laughed, actually laughed. Sophia? No. She's completely in love with me. She trusts me completely. It's almost too easy. You always did have a gift for manipulation, the woman said. Remember how upset you were when that pharmaceutical researcher figured you out? But you've perfected your technique since then. Practice makes perfect, Alexander replied smoothly. Once we're married and I have what I need, I'll drag out the divorce for about a year to make it look believable. She'll be heartbroken, but she'll get over it. Artists are resilient. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. But it was too late. Alexander heard something. He spun around in his chair, and his eyes widened when he saw her standing in the doorway. For one brief moment, she saw something flash across his face. Was it guilt? Regret? But then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Sophia, he said calmly, standing up. I can explain. Explain? The word came out as a whisper. Explain how you've been lying to me for 6 months. How you never loved me. How you only wanted my father's journal? It's not that simple. When? Sophia demanded, her voice growing stronger even as tears started streaming down her face. When did you take pictures of the journal? I keep it in my studio, locked in my desk. Alexander had the decency to look uncomfortable. That weekend you went to visit your mother. I still had the key to your studio. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. You've been planning this the whole time. From the very beginning. The gallery, did you even accidentally meet me, or was that planned too? Maya introduced us, Alexander said, as if that made it better. But yes, I knew who you were. I knew about your father's company, about his patents. When I found out you inherited his journal, I saw an opportunity. An opportunity. Sophia laughed, a bitter, broken sound. I was an opportunity. Sophia, listen. No. She ripped the engagement ring off her finger and threw it at him. It bounced off his chest and clattered across the expensive hardwood floor. Every moment, every kiss, every I love you, it was all a lie. The business was separate from. From what? From your feelings? Sophia's voice was rising now, months of love transforming into fury. You don't have feelings, Alexander. You're a monster. A manipulative, cold-hearted monster who destroys people for profit. She turned to leave, but his words stopped her. If you tell anyone about this, I'll destroy you, Alexander said, his voice quiet but deadly serious. I have lawyers, Sophia. Resources you can't even imagine. And that journal? Even though you threw the ring back, I still have all the information I need. If you try to fight me, I'll tie you up in court for years. I'll make sure no gallery ever shows your work again. I'll ruin you. Sophia looked back at him, this man she'd loved, this stranger she'd never really known. You already have, she whispered. And then she ran. Part 2, Shattered and Rising, 2,000 words. The confrontation. Sophia didn't remember driving back to her studio. One moment she was in Alexander's penthouse, her world crumbling around her, and the next she was sitting on the paint-stained floor of her studio, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. How could she have been so stupid? So blind? Every red flag she'd ignored came rushing back. The way he'd asked so many questions about her father. His sudden interest in medical technology right after they started dating. The prenup he'd been so insistent she sign without her own lawyer. Maya had tried to warn her, and she'd pushed her best friend away. Her phone rang. Alexander. She rejected the call. It rang again. And again. Finally, she turned it off. But 20 minutes later, there was a knock on her studio door. Sophia, I know you're in there. Alexander's voice was muffled through the door. We need to talk. Go away, she screamed. Please. Just let me explain. Against every instinct telling her to stay locked inside, Sophia stood up and opened the door. Alexander stood there looking, tired. His perfect hair was disheveled, his tie was loose, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost human. "You have 5 minutes," Sophia said coldly. He stepped inside, and she left the door open, an escape route if she needed it. "What I said on that call," he began, "was the truth," Sophia finished. "Don't you dare try to convince me otherwise." Alexander ran his hand through his hair. "Yes. It was the truth. At first." "At first?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "So when did it change? After the 3rd lie? The 10th? "I started this as a business transaction," Alexander said, his voice rough. "That's what I do, Sophia. I see opportunities, and I take them. When I found out you had your father's journal with all his unrealized patents, yes, I saw a way to get ahead in the medical tech market. How noble of you to admit it. But then I got to know you," Alexander continued, looking directly at her. "Your passion, your dedication to your art even when everyone told you it was worthless. The way you see beauty in chaos. Sophia, somewhere along the way, I actually fell in love with you." "Don't." Sophia held up her hand. "Don't you dare say that to me. It's true. If you loved me, you would have told me the truth. If you loved me, you wouldn't have stolen from me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been planning our divorce before we even got married. That call, Veronica is my business partner. I was just telling her what she wanted to hear. I wasn't actually planning to." "Stop." Sophia screamed. "Just stop. Every word out of your mouth is a lie. I don't know what's real and what's manipulation anymore." Alexander took a step closer, and she backed away. "Please, Sophia. I know I handled this wrong. But we can fix this. I'll give you half the patents. We can be partners, business partners, and get out." Her voice was deadly quiet now. "Sophia. Get out before I call the police and report you for theft." Something hard flashed in Alexander's eyes. "You won't do that." "Why? Because you'll destroy me?" "Go ahead. I have nothing left for you to take." "You think I'm the villain here," Alexander said, his voice changing, becoming colder. "But your father? He wasn't the hero you thought he was either." Sophia felt like she'd been slapped. "Don't you talk about my father. He built his company on stolen ideas too, Sophia. Where do you think he got the original designs for his cardiac devices? From a junior researcher he fired after stealing her work. Your father was just better at hiding it than I am." "That's a lie." "Is it? Check his journal. Early entries, before he started his company. You'll see notes referencing someone named Dr. Sarah Chen. Look her up. See what happened to her career after your father built his empire. Get out." Sophia's whole body was shaking now. Alexander walked to the door, then paused. "I did love you, Sophia. Maybe that makes me a monster, that I could love you and still do this. But it's the truth." He looked at her one last time. "I'm sorry." Then he was gone, leaving Sophia alone with her shattered heart and a terrible seed of doubt about the father she'd spent 3 years mourning. The cruel truth. The next 2 weeks were the darkest of Sophia's life. She couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Could barely paint. Every canvas she touched turned into angry slashes of black and red, her pain manifesting in violent strokes that looked nothing like her usual work. Maya came by every day, bringing food that Sophia didn't eat, offering comfort that Sophia couldn't accept. "I told you," Maya said gently on the 5th day. "I tried to warn you." "I know," Sophia whispered. "You were right. I was stupid and blind and—" "Hey." Maya grabbed her shoulders. "Don't you dare blame yourself for his manipulation. Alexander is a professional liar. This is what he does. But I should have seen it. The signs were there." "Love makes us blind sometimes," Maya said. "That's not your fault." But it felt like her fault. Everything felt like her fault. The worst part was what Alexander had said about her father. For days, Sophia resisted looking at the journal. But finally, curiosity and doubt won. She pulled the leather journal from her desk drawer and flipped to the early entries, back when her father was just starting out. And there it was. Page after page of notes referencing S.C. Sarah Chen. Technical drawings that her father had later claimed as his own. References to her brilliant but naive approach to adaptive technology. Sophia felt sick. She looked up Dr. Sarah Chen online and found a brief Wikipedia entry. A promising young researcher whose career had mysteriously ended after she was fired from a small medical device startup in the late 1990s. The startup's founder? James Martinez. Sophia's father. Everything she'd believed was a lie. Her father wasn't the self-made success story she'd thought. And Alexander had seen right through her family's history because he was the same kind of person her father had been. That realization broke something fundamental inside her. The breakdown. On day 16 after the breakup, Sophia's landlord knocked on her studio door. "Miss Martinez, we need to talk about the rent." Sophia opened the door, not caring that she looked like a disaster, unwashed hair, dark circles under her eyes, wearing the same clothes she'd had on for 3 days. "I paid rent," she said dully. "You paid last month's rent. With Mr. Hunt's money." The landlord looked uncomfortable. "I got a call from his lawyer this morning. The payment bounced. Apparently, he cancelled the check." Of course he did. Alexander's revenge for her refusing to play along. "I'll pay," Sophia said, even though she had no idea how. "Miss Martinez, that's not all. His lawyer also informed me that there are concerns about the safety of this building. Fire code violations. They're threatening to report me unless..." He trailed off, looking miserable. "Unless you evict me," Sophia finished. The landlord nodded. "I'm sorry. I really am. But I can't afford the fines or the legal battle. You have until the end of the month." 2 weeks. She had 2 weeks to find a new studio, come up with money she didn't have, and somehow rebuild a life that had been completely destroyed. That night, Sophia stood on the roof of her building, looking down at the street below. 5 stories. Would that be enough? Would it be quick? She thought about her mother, who was already struggling after losing her father. She thought about Maya, who had stood by her through everything. She thought about all the paintings she hadn't created yet, all the beauty still locked inside her waiting to come out. And she thought about Alexander, sitting in his penthouse, probably already moving on to his next victim. If she jumped, he won. Completely and totally won. Sophia stepped back from the edge. "Not today," she whispered to the wind. "Not ever." The unexpected ally. The next morning, there was a knock on her studio door. Sophia almost didn't answer. She was done with visitors, done with people, done with everything. But something made her open it. A man stood there, probably in his mid-50s, with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes. He wore an expensive suit but carried himself with none of Alexander's arrogance. "Miss Martinez? My name is Marcus Chin. I'm an art collector. I was wondering if I might see your work." Sophia stared at him. "How did you find me?" "Your friend Maya gave me your address. She said you might be open to a studio visit." He smiled gently. "I promise I'm not here to waste your time. I've seen photographs of your pieces, and I believe you have real talent." Something about him seemed genuine. Or maybe Sophia was just desperate for anything that felt normal. "Come in," she said. Marcus walked slowly through the studio, examining each piece with careful attention. He spent extra time on the newer paintings, the angry, violent ones full of pain and betrayal. "These are extraordinary," he said finally. "Raw. Honest. They hurt to look at, which means they're real." They're garbage, Sophia said. Just like everything else I've created. Marcus turned to face her. May I speak plainly, Miss Martinez? Call me Sophia. Sophia. I know what Alexander Hunt did to you. She froze. How? Because he did the same thing to my daughter. Marcus's voice was quiet but filled with old pain. 5 years ago. She was a pharmaceutical researcher. Brilliant. Beautiful. Alexander seduced her, stole her work, destroyed her career. He paused. She never recovered. She died 2 years ago. Suicide. Sophia felt tears spring to her eyes. I'm so sorry. Her name was Sarah Chen. The name hit Sophia like a freight train. Sarah Chen. Dr. Sarah Chen. She worked for my father. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes. Your father stole her early work. Then Alexander stole her later work. My daughter was crushed twice by men she trusted. He looked directly at Sophia. I've been watching Alexander for years, waiting for a chance to stop him. When Maya reached out to me and told me what happened to you, I knew this was that chance. I don't understand. Why are you telling me this? Because I think we can help each other, Marcus said. I have resources, money, connections, legal expertise. And you have something I don't have, you know Alexander intimately. You know his patterns, his weaknesses. You want revenge, Sophia said. I want justice, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. I want Alexander Hunt to face consequences for what he's done. Not just to you and my daughter, but to all the others. Because there have been others, Sophia. So many others. Sophia thought about the woman on the video call, Veronica, Alexander's business partner, who had clearly helped him manipulate before. She thought about her father, who had done the same thing decades earlier. A cycle of predators and victims, going on and on. What would I have to do? Sophia asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time in weeks, Sophia felt a spark of something other than pain. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of fire. The transformation begins. The first thing Marcus did was pay Sophia's rent for 6 months. Consider it an investment, he said when she protested. You can't plan revenge when you're worried about being homeless. The second thing he did was introduce her to his team. A lawyer named Patricia who specialized in corporate theft. An investigator named James who had been gathering information on Alexander for 3 years. And a therapist named Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, who Marcus insisted Sophia see twice a week. Revenge without healing is just more destruction, Marcus said. I learned that the hard way after Sarah died. I was so focused on hurting Alexander that I forgot to help myself. The therapy sessions were hard. Dr. Rodriguez didn't let Sophia hide behind anger or plans for revenge. She made her confront the pain, the betrayal, the feelings of worthlessness that had been planted by Alexander's lies. You are not what he made you feel, Dr. Rodriguez said in their third session. You are not stupid for trusting someone you loved. You are not broken because someone else chose to break their promises. Slowly, painfully, Sophia began to heal. Not completely, she knew those scars would always be there. But she started to feel like herself again. Started to paint again, this time channeling her pain into something beautiful instead of just violent. Marcus also introduced her to a different side of the art world. Real collectors who appreciated art for its emotion and meaning, not just its investment value. Within 2 months, Sophia had sold 6 paintings for prices that made her gasp. She wasn't rich, but she was stable. Independent. Strong. You're doing well, Marcus said one evening as they reviewed James's latest investigation report. Both with your art and with yourself. I have you to thank for that, Sophia said. No. You did this. I just gave you the tools. Marcus looked at the report. Are you ready to see what we've found? Sophia took a deep breath. Show me. Planning the comeback. The conference room in Marcus's office building was covered in documents, photographs, and computer screens displaying spreadsheets and legal filings. James, the investigator, stood at the front like a professor giving a lecture. Alexander Hunt has been running a sophisticated pattern of corporate espionage for the past 7 years, he began. We've identified 12 women he's targeted. Each one had something he wanted: patents, inside information, business connections. 12 women whose lives he'd manipulated and destroyed. How did he get away with it? Sophia asked. He's careful, Patricia the lawyer explained. He never puts anything in writing.